Over the past 3 decades, the concentration of wealth in Canada has never been this skewed. Throughout history, there has always been the haves and the have-nots, the kings and the peasants, the nobleman and the farmer, the elite and the working class. In Canada, we call it the old and the young. What is wealth? To simplify, wealth is what you own minus what you owe. Your assets minus your liabilities. The cash in the bank is an asset. Your stock portfolio is an asset. If you own a home, that is an asset. Conversely, liabilities are what you owe. Your mortgage is a liability. Your car note is a liability. Your credit card debt, that is also a liability. You get the point. In Canada, the haves and the have-nots, or better known as the old and the young, are in an economic arms race, where the artillery used to subdue one cohort of the population, the young, is through policy, lobbyists, and narratives, ensuring the status quo remains unchanged and the flow of funds never diverts. A war that most do not know they are in, but will unfortunately be a casualty of. Let's look at the facts. The young, aged 35 and under, own the smallest share of the pie. Fair. They've had less time to accumulate wealth relative to the old. But how much is too little and how much is too much? Let's look at proportionality. For something to be considered proportional or equal, the share of outcome equals the share of population. For example, if you have 10 cookies and 10 people, a proportional share would be that everyone gets 1 cookie. Now, wealth is different in that you should get compensated based on what you justly worked for. That is the basis of capitalism, which drives progression. Founders of Apple, Amazon, or Uber that made our lives 1,000 times efficient and better deserve adequate compensation. Fair. Let's go back to proportionality. In Canada, those aged 35 and under own less than 10% of the wealth, while making up over 40% of the population. Those aged 55 and over own 60% of the wealth, while making up 30% of the population. In economics, a mild disproportionality is 1.3x. Anything higher than 1.5x is breaching on high disproportionality and a case for concentration. And by the way, all these facts that I just stated can be found on Stats Canada's website. So, boomers aged 55 plus owning 60% of the wealth and making up 30% of the population is a disproportionality ratio of 2x. This type of disproportionality is very high, bordering on extreme. And it's only going higher with the old owning most of the housing supply, stocks, and private investment. And by the way, these are just reported numbers. The data doesn't capture the number of ultra-wealthy boomers that don't respond and underreport their wealth. Pensions and old age security. So based on facts and statistics that I've just stated, older generations in Canada own the majority of wealth at disproportionate levels. Who are the beneficiaries of pensions and old age security? You guessed it, the old. The same people who own the majority of the wealth in this country. Funded by taxes, mainly from the young, old age security, also known as OAS, was introduced in 1952 when the system was still intact. Back then, housing costs were super low relative to income. There wasn't ultra high levels of wealth disparity, and unemployment like today wasn't at record high levels. Taxes to OAS from your paycheck back then to fund the elderly made sense and wasn't an ever increasing strain. Now, beneficiaries of OAS today had decades worth of wealth accumulation through buying a $100,000 bungalow worth $2 million today and stock portfolios ballooning to new highs, only to continue demanding OAS from young, assetless earners, essentially taking from the poor to fund the rich. With wealth comes power. Members of parliament are mainly aged 50 and older. Majority of decisions in government and in large corporations are driven by the old. When a specific demographic controls most of the wealth, is also in positions of power, you get a social order that's stacked against the young. There's a narrative out there that the young are lazy, aren't smart, and don't work hard enough. Younger people actually have higher educations and higher nominal incomes than boomers did and are still structurally behind. It's not a matter of merit or competence, but an outdated system that's coincidentally still rigged in their favor. As the saying goes, there is no coincidence, only the illusion of coincidence. Thanks for listening.